This is him.
Wow.
Look how old that was.
That was long.
And this was a prisoner of war, and he was signing his memoirs. And this is his citation for bravery.
Wow.
One of my classmates had a shotgun, and he was shooting at the police station because he was drinking a lot, beer, and he wanted them to kill him. But Dad got there, and he rushed over there, and he called him by name and said, and grabbed the gun out of his hand, and so they called it a citation of bravery, and that was back in 1968.
Wow.
And so he finally got him, and not only did he help him, but he got him in a place where he could be helped, and he turned out to be all right. Isn't that neat? Mm-hmm. And here's this a distinguished member of the poets.
Oh.
And this is the my computer room, and this is.
You got rid of the couch?
Yeah, everything. But this is where I worked. This National Association of Fleet Administrators. Oh. They painted this, but I wish they'd done my face. Mm-hmm. But look at who that was from. You see that? That's from your dad, and your mama, mm-hmm. and that's something that they did. And a minister drew this over at Cece's Pizza one day, but look at it, it's supposed to be me. Isn't that funny? And that was his name, is his name, and so this is kind of a long story, but I used to weigh 240 pounds. And that is a lot for me. But at the time, my mother and my wife and my wife's aunt were all in hospital at the same time in ICU in 3 different hospitals. And I'd get up real early in the morning and go over here to the atrium on airport and to be with my wife, and she passed in 2010. And I drove 35 miles to Pasadena, where her aunt lived, and she passed in 2010. And then I drove back to Bel Air, where my mom was, and she was 98, still driving, but hospitals are made for sick people, and she got pneumonia and congestive heart failure and staph infection, all caused by the hospital, and she passed in 2011. And so I thought, well, what will I do? And so I decided to walk. And I walked 26 miles in 5.5 hours. And one day I did 30 miles. But I kept track, and Annabelle, for a year I walked 3,190 miles. And I lost 100 pounds and 16 inches in the waist, and I'm feeling good. And so the Lord just keeps blessing and blessing, doesn't he? Well, looky here.
Miles, huh,
Annabelle? And I passed Forrest Gump twice, and his email is one Forrest one. And this is Charlie's my brother's wife, and this was her. That was her funeral, and that was in 2006. And this is a real old, see these old pictures?
Wow.
And so this is my grandfather's wife that had died.
Wow.
And look how old that is. And that's that old stuff. And there's pictures of them, and of Ralph and Lucille, and
so that was Nana's parents.
No, this is my parents.
Your parents.
But
okay.
this is all a thing.
So this is Who's in this one?
That's Dottie
Okay.
and her boyfriend, I guess, at that time. I'm not sure. But I don't know who that is. And there's when I got married.
Look, there's Nana and Pop-Pop.
Uh-huh.
And so Pop-Pop's parents, that was, wow, Mimi looks so different.
I know. And
On this side. What a cool picture.
hey, Chris.
Hey, what's up, Nelson?
I've got all my grandkids are here. I mean, great grandchildren are here, and so I'm afraid I can't make it this time. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be back in touch.
Okay, brother. God bless you.
Not guy in a group home.
Yeah.
A group home is where a whole group of people are that they don't have a home, and so they. And it's all kinds of different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And so, and there's Mimi when she passed away.
Yeah.
And this is the old picture of Houston, and that's all my school stuff right there.
Oh, neat.
And this is really, really, really neat.
You want to take it in the...
Yeah. Well, wait a minute, I'll show you.
Here?
See who that is?
Oh, look at that. Pop-Pop. That was at the mall or something, right?
It was at the Sharpstown Mall.
Mommy,
Yeah.
Turn it
do that
around.
look like anybody in our family?
It looks like you.
Beckett to me.
and then Beckett. See this?
Oh.
This was at the Mint in Denver.
Oh.
And Dottie and I and me and Papa were at the Mint. And as we went back to our timeshare, we went through Columbine, the day that all the massacre was taking place. We didn't even know it, but it's pretty neat. And when I was in Chicago, and this that's Mildred Hopper and with those fish, the big old tarpon, and this was my first little house.
Oh, really?
And it was 600 square feet, $6,000,
Wow.
$32.50 a month.
Wow. And where was this at?
At Oklahoma City.
In Oklahoma. Okay.
On 57th Street. and you've heard of George Strait?
George Strait, a singer?
This is him.
You've heard some of his music.
There he is. and here he is with me.
Oh, you got to meet him?
And I thought he was a big, tall guy, and he's about my size. Really, really neat guy. And so, I got to. This was called a meet and greet. We got with George, and then this is something that Mimi and Papa got from the White House.
Oh.
Open it up, and you can get to see. Happy birthday from the White House.
Happy birthday! We're pleased to add our best wishes to your celebration. May your day be filled with joy, cherished memories, and the love of friends from George Bush and Laura Bush. And one from Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan. Wow! On your anniversary. This one was happy anniversary. Happy anniversary! Barbara Bush.
And when I was in Chicago, open that other one up there.
Okay.
You just leave it there. That's all right. Doesn't matter.
See who I met in Chicago in 1996.
Looks like
Ooh.
the mafia or something.
That's funny. Can you see that? All dressed up.
And there and Pop-Pop likes to play golf. And one day we were raising money for Westbury Christian School.
Aww.
And we went out to Hockley, where I worked for Tenneco Oil Company at that time, and they had their own golf course. And so 25 of us raised money. Some of them so much around, and some so much a hole, and I played 115 holes in one day.
Usually you play 18, and that's a long
It was six and a half. It was kind of rainy.
Really?
And everybody else had somebody to drive their golf cart, but I did not, and so I had to get out, and I was 79 over after all of that time, and so I got first place.
Oh wow!
Well, I didn't. I'm sorry. A professional did 125 holes.
Yeah.
But see, look up there. This is when I was in Seattle, Washington,
Really?
and look at there on the kids.
Seattle, you have to have your rain jacket in Seattle.
And
right?
there's Charlie and I and Mimi. That was at Dad's funeral.
Okay.
And
Look at that little face under "We Love You, Nana" that Connor's making. That looks like a little Beckett face.
and so I got to see the ink spots.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the ink spots. Yeah, and this is really kind of neat too. There's your grandpa. There they are next to it too.
Oh, is that Tim and Tammy? Is that Tim and Tammy?
Yeah.
That second
And
one?
look this time she wants me to tear those up.
Oh, so cute. Little Tammy, look at her glasses. Oh my goodness.
But look at how her teeth were.
That was Tammy?
Yes.
Really?
All of that is Tammy.
Hey, what's this?
Huh? That's my wife's grandmother. And they each had, were from families of 12, Ralph Adair's. She had 101 first cousins. We quit counting at 101 first cousins.
Oh my goodness.
And so Dottie went to Harding Christian College in Searcy, Arkansas. It's up by Little Rock. And so they were singers, and they went all over the world, and they got to sing. And this is them when they're acting silly. Look at their big old shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just some rough old cowboys, I tell you.
Oh.
And there I am.
That's you?
Yeah.
Oh. Look, this was Papa when he's little. Look. When he was a little boy. What do you think about that? He looks so fancy and handsome.
So one of the
So cute.
one of the guys that Charlie knows is Mike Tomasini.
Oh.
Okay, and he was a wrestler and played on a professional football team. And when he was a wrestler, his neck was 23 inches around,
Oh my goodness.
and he can crush a pair of pliers in his hand. And so Charlie went over to Mike's house,
Oh.
and he went down, and he had 50 rare guns back there, and it looked like behind jail bars.
Wow.
He said, "Oh, you should have seen it when it was 100 guns." And so Ron Tomasini, when Charlie had last year I think it was in July of last year, he had 3 colon cancer operations. And then after the 3 he had a massive heart attack, and he had a stent put in, and then it had an aortic valve for $95,000 put in, and he's got 3 cardiologists, but he's doing okay, look at these. You can look at it, just looks like you could reach in, doesn't it?
Earlier, Beckett was going like this. He was trying to...
and as you turn, it follows you.
Oh.
See, even these. And this is summer, winter.
Oh, different seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And see, look, this is when we were married. Uh-huh. And this is where she went to college. And look up there. That is, you know who that is?
Papa and Aunt Jimmy.
That's right.
Really?
No, that's just your papa.
Just Papa.
and so they over at the wellness center, they called me Mr. Unstoppable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that tells kind of the little story that I've been telling you. I was walking over 100 miles a month.
Wow.
And I wish I could show you all the pictures. I've got loads of pictures. And when we were in Disneyland, see up there, and it just, all of the stuff in there, it just goes on and on and on.
All right, girls, come back.
And and then this. Look, there's the. Here he is. There's some Tinker toys he could play with. Lincoln Logs.
Oh, Lincoln Logs are fun. Those were my favorite when I was a kid.
Yeah, and see the paper dolls there. See right there.
Oh, there's dolls.
And look at that. Who's that?
Oh, that was from our rehearsal dinner. Wow.
Pluto's that. Let's see.
And see Keith behind the door.
Oh, Keith is over here. Oh, so cute. Beckett, do you want to see what's in this box? Do you want me to show you?
When Mom and Dad retired, they went to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and they lived out on a 4-story house. And a friend of theirs painted this. And this was his the top floor, and he painted this kind of pink in there, and that's something. Not Papa, but a friend of theirs painted this, and then they painted this picture too, and then they painted that picture. Look at there, and see where it says the Becketts. And this was in Eureka Springs here, Jordan. This was in Eureka Springs, and a friend of theirs painted this and that as well. Pretty nifty, huh?
What do you think that's supposed to be?
That's Tammy and Tim. And this was Dottie's high school diploma. And this was oh my goodness, this was me. See me over there? That was on the front page of the paper. I was in the Boy Scouts. And then this was, I was at Boys State. And I think I was way, oh my goodness, it was, there I am right there, way back here. You see how many of us were there? And then this was when I was in high school. There was like a high school class. We had 120 people. And then this is when we graduated. See all of those people in their graduation outfits. And then I was a deacon 10 years and an elder 26 years at the Southwest Church here in Houston. And we moved here in 1961. That's a long time ago. But then this is all me in my boot camp in the Navy. See, way up there. And this is showing just my honorable discharge. And when we crossed the equator up there, we got to see the atomic bomb testing out in the South Pacific. Oh, it was really something. I'll tell you all about it. But it was called Operation Red Wing. And they even had an initiation you had to go through when we crossed the equator. And then this is another picture of Dottie and I in 1996 in Mazda. I painted these. They not really look like us, but it's kind of cute. And then there's where I graduated high school, and there's where I graduated college. And there's my honorable discharge. My discharge papers, and I typed that up myself because that's what I did, and I typed a lot. And this is the whole book about the Eureka Springs. And see, here's Papa right there. And this is Claude Heslop. He was from A&M. He was drafted too, but he was they had him out on the deck scraping things, and he even fell and broke his nose. And so I got him a job where I was, and so he got to come in and work with me. And we'll continue in the next time. Oh, and this is. I did not know who this was, this painting, because it's an old painting. But I looked and see this right there, her nose. Well, look, that was my grandmother. See that? That was her. And nobody got to know her because she died at my father's birth. And so this, that made this my grandfather, and this is him.
I think it looks like him.
Yeah, and look, this is my Uncle Dale. I was named Nelson Dale, and Tim was Timothy Dale. And I'll tell about his tragic death later. But when I was I wish Sarah was here, because when I was in China, it was a place. It kind of looked like a flea market, and so. I went over, and it was like a telephone booth covered with sheets, and I thought, what is this? So I went over there and I pulled the sheet back, and here's a guy on a bar stool, barefooted, painting, and I thought, oh my goodness, and it looked like a real good picture, and so I had 3 pictures. This was one of them that I had, and this is what he painted. Isn't that amazing? And so I had another picture of Nana, and that's where and he did that, and I had it framed.
You painted that?
And then this was me, and I looked like the Gerber baby. That's before I was 1 year old.
Can you believe you painted that, Annabelle? Isn't that crazy?
And then this is, you know who? That's Tim, and that's Tammy.
Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, and oh, and here, look here, Annabelle. This is all the stuff that I had won. See, I sold cars. I sold lots of cars and trucks. Pretty neat, huh?
What's that?
That's one Mildred Hopper and Mom and Dad when they were catching fish.
Look at that huge fish, Annabelle.
That-
It's bigger than her.
Wow. Taller than her.
And I'll just kind of jump to some of the stuff that I've got is amazing.
Ooh, that looks like an old paper. Whoa. Front page, you see what it says?
The war, December 7th, 1941.
Oahu bombed by Japanese planes. That's in Hawaii. Another country came to.
Right, and then this is him when he was finding, you know, I told you he found all the drugs. Look where they found some of the drugs underneath the dash in the where the light was on the car.
Oh, the headline.
Right, all that marijuana, and it $150,000 haul, and that's something. And it was on the same day that the rocket blasted off, and it just goes on and on and on, and all the different things of. Just little things, and Dottie's and when we were engaged, and just all of these so old, and I got things of Princess Di and all the presidents, and it just. Just J.W. Mashburn. See, that was the actual picture. Dad just amazing, and that is quite a story, isn't it? But I worked at Lawrence Marshall in Hempstead, Texas. That's about 55 miles up there and back every day. We had 100 salesmen. Can you imagine that? Guess how much Pop-Up has sold in 1 month? 99 vehicles in 1 month. That's a lot. And so he's Church of Christ also. And he built them a church there in Hempstead. And his wife said, honey, I would like for you to build me a chapel for weddings and funerals, and I don't want us to charge. And he said, and let's make this golf course public instead of private. And so he came into my office one day and said, Nelson, he said, I want you to do anything you want to do, go anywhere you want to go, as long as it's something that makes our business a success. So I went to every state except North Dakota. And I got to go to Spain. And one of the fleet managers here in Houston, his wife, worked for an olive company, and so they decided that her boss found out about it, and so he said, "When you're in Spain, come and see me." So I thought that the food in Spain would be spicy. No, it was bland. It was, and so I said to Dottie for the trip, I said, "What can we take for the trip?" And she said, "Well, what about a fruit salad?" And so I ordered a fruit salad, and they came out with a plate, and it had an apple and a pear on it. Can you imagine? So we went up to Seville, the capital of Spain, and it was like the Galleria. I mean, there's people going everywhere, and the lights, and we didn't know where we were going. And so I waved to a guy at a stoplight, and he came over, and I told him what was going on, and where should we go? And he said, I'm the guy that you came to see out of all of those people. And so they went in and got to see the factory. And so the next day, 60 of us got on a tour bus. And we went, and we were at Malaga, Spain, and it's right at the bottom of Spain, and Costa del Sol they called it. And so we started going along there, and it was kind of misty, rainy, but the olive trees were in bloom, and we got to Gibraltar, big Gibraltar, and we all got on a hydrofoil. That's a boat that's big enough to have 60 people in it, and the faster it it starts going, and it goes 60 miles an hour all the way over to Morocco, and it was kind of misty, rainy out, like I say, and we got over there, and so I went down to this place, and it was just apartments on all the way up, and there's one guy sitting down there it had a wicker basket, and he had a little flute, and I was watching him, and a big king cobra snake came out of there, and it snapped at me, and I thought, oh no, and I jumped back. I didn't know it. They had defanged the snake, but I went on into Morocco, into the restaurant. And oh my goodness, we had a window seat, and it looked way down at the Atlantic Ocean, and it's so pretty. And we even had Moroccan shish kebabs for lunch. Okay. And then I worked for a pharmaceutical company. Vern Savage was the owner, and he was Church of Christ also. And I made my quota 31 months in a row, and I got to go to Mexico City during the 1968 Olympics. And Dottie and I were sitting there having coffee one morning outside a cafe, and here came a pole vaulter, and he had won the gold medal. And I got up and I met him, and then when I got home, his picture was on a Wheaties cereal box.
Famous, huh?
Yeah, and so while we were there, Vern claimed he knew a lot of good Spanish, and so there was about 7 of us that had taken our golf clubs, and one morning real early we were loading them in, and he was talking to the cabbie, and we were supposed to go to the Club de Golf de Mexico. Well, that was the best one in the whole nation of Mexico. And so we got in, and we went over to this golf course, and it was so nice. We had a caddy, and there was a gardener on each hole that was putting out flowers, and when we got inside after 9 holes, we kind of wanted to rest a little bit, and they had a big layout of all kind of fruits and all kind of stuff, and so I'm looking, and I looked at the napkin. It said Club de Golf Chapultepec. We weren't even at the good one. So he had made a mistake, but we enjoyed it anyway. And so we just had a real good time in Mexico City because we went to all the museums. And the museums were great. It showed all the different types of people in Mexico, and there is sweet little Hattie Lou. And I just know that you would have had a lot of fun had you been there with us, because we were just having a lot of fun.
What's that?
Sure.
You got it?
Would you like to have a popsicle? A boat that's about 15 feet long, and it had an inboard Cushman 5-horse engine, and you could push it like this, and it'd go to the left, and pull it, and it'd go to the right. And so we had fished all day long, and it was hot, but Corpus Christi Bay, it was just like a mirror. It was just beautiful. And so we had one big shrimp left, and so we were at the mile marker, and Mom said, "I've got one big shrimp left," and so I said, "Okay, I'll throw out the anchor." And so Dad was on the back, and I threw out the anchor, and Mimi said, "But my line, it's moving already." And Dad said, "Jerk and try to hook it." Well. Anyway, she fought it in, and it was a 35-pound drum. And they call it a drum because when he comes up, it goes boom, 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 like that. And so we had a 35-pound drum. So the next morning, we're out bright and early, and we go to that same spot, and we got 5 more of them.
Oh my.
And I've got the picture of it mounted, and it was on my wall.
They're huge.
Yeah, they were huge. We didn't need them, but the Mexicans loved them. And they're kind of like from the redfish family. And and I just think that was so cute of them painting your bride. And Mimi was sitting in there too, and so was that. That was me. And I think that was Keith. And this is me when I was in wrestling in high school, 1952. And there's Dottie. And there's Tim. And your bride. And that dimple.
That's a great one.
That's a great. And so this is kind of hard to take, but my Uncle Dale that I showed you, he jumped on a freight train, and when he did, it threw him over, and a bolt went right through his temple. And my Uncle Ed, and he was in the Army, and he was at a place kind of like Denny's restaurant, and in walks a guy, and he said, "Is there anybody in here?" He was in his uniform. He said, "Anybody in here that can help me get my car started?" Well, he was, I'd be glad to do it, and he went out. And he sat in the driver's seat, and the other guy was in the passenger, and then the guy in the back. And so they in Salinas, California, and they have these big lettuce fields. And so they got out by one of the lettuce fields, and the guy in the back pulled out some pruning shears and hit him in the head with it, knocked him out the door. And they fought for a 40-foot circle around the lettuce fields, and they stabbed him in the back 5 times, and kept beating on him, and then the 2 of them took off, and left him out there. Well, they caught them even before they found Ed. And they called it in the mystery books the case of the bloody hands, and the blood was dripping off of their elbows. And so a motorcycle policeman saw him, and he went rushing out there, and he was still alive. And he said, "Pete, my head hurts," and it was just like hamburger meat all over the top of his head, and he died on the way to the hospital. And my Uncle Garland had heard about it, and he had already flown out there, and the 2 of them, he said, "Let me have at least 15 minutes with them." Of course, they didn't, but it was the very first time that anyone was put to death in the gas chamber, 2 of them at a time. But Garland got to sit there and watch it as it happened. And then Garland died of an overdose. That's what I'm saying. They were all really rough. But Jack Connor Smith, as it turns out, he was in the Navy, and he was in Guam, and he was just a wonderful guy. And I was there in Abilene at his bedside before he died, and got to be with him and Beatrice. And when I flew home, they called me and said he had died, and I flew back for his funeral. It really was sad. But
you want to grab a seat?
Sure. Let's see what we can.
Tell me about.
Atomic bomb?
Well, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear about
Atomic bomb?
your. Yeah.
And,
I want to hear that, but I think.
okay.
I think Sarah and Bob might be interested in hearing that too, but and of course they'll hear it on the video.
Sure.
But would you tell me about a little bit more about your parents?
Oh, sure. Sure. They were just so sweet. And thing about it is, people just don't know about. Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, let me make an adjustment. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, Papa Beckett was just. Well, I'll just give you an example. One time they were out at this Beverly's Chicken in the Rough, and I got out. My grandmother, she was kind of paralyzed on one side, and she was kind of babysitting me, and I was, I guess, about 11 years old, and I went out in the garage, and we had an international truck. And so I thought, I'm going to back this out. Well, I did, but I banged up the fender. And oh man, I dreaded, thinking when he came back. But instead of that, he said, son, that's happened to me before. And he said, don't you ever think about worrying about it. And I can hardly talk about it. But I remember I was going back to Abilene Christian. I just went there one semester because Dottie and I got married. But on the way out there at Wichita Falls, I stopped to get gas and locked the keys in the trunk. And so I thought, oh boy. And so Dad came all the way out there, and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. He had an extra set. He said, don't worry, this probably kept you from having an accident down the way. And just those kind of things. But at night, when we'd go to bed every night, he'd come in and we'd have it back and forth. He'd say, night, night. I'd say, sleep tight. He said, don't let the bed bugs bite. And he said, if they do, catch a few and I'll fry them for you. And and it was that kind of thing. And Mother never, I don't even remember her not smiling. And even times when we'd come up to Oklahoma City, Dan and Tammy and their kids up there, she had fixed, was going to have spaghetti and meatballs. Well, we were all sat down to eat and said, where's the spaghetti? And she hadn't made the spaghetti yet. But we made it. She was a great cook. And because even when we were in our little house over on 57th Street, Dottie would take take her, go over to our house on 51st, and Mother would show her how to make gravy. And so we just had so much fun doing that. And as I told you, the story about the house, I don't know if it's on there or not, but it was 600 square feet and $6,000, $32.50 a month. And when we came back from our honeymoon to Hot Springs, Arkansas, all my friends and neighbors had taken all the for sale signs and everything, and put it out in our front yard. And then, of course, when we came back, they did what they call the chivalry. They just brought us all these gifts and everything. And but they turned out to be the father and mother of Charlie, and Charlie had all these operations. Do you want me to put that on there too?
Why don't you tell about Dottie's parents?
Oh, okay. They lived in Transylvania and Arkansas, and he had 100 acres of cotton and 100 acres of soybeans. It was, the land was so rich because when it flooded up in up the Mississippi River all the way up to St. Louis, Missouri, it flooded, and when it did, it washed all that rich soil onto their property, and it made it, but it was so much so that they had to go to California, and they were out there, and he worked out there. But Ralph and Lucille were primarily farmers, while they were there, Lucille would even feed the people at noon, because their cotton grew to be 12 feet tall. And I mean, it was cotton, and they didn't have these big cotton machines at that time, and they had to pick all that cotton, you know, and like I say, she fed them, but she took all the milk that when they'd milk all the cows, and she'd churn it and make butter. And they had 15 acres of pecans, and we never had to buy a pecan. And they even in the month of February one year, they even shipped a side of beef to us. And but he would get up and not only milk the cows, but he'd feed the chickens and slop the hogs, and you know, just a hard worker, and very serious guy. And when I first saw him, you know, he looked at me, and I didn't know what to think of him. But he just a kind person. Ended up being the janitor at Eldridge Road Church of Christ. And so what Lucille would do, beside churning all the stuff, she would pack up a lot of the stuff, and then go sell it at the grocery store for them to have some more food. I mean, more money, and we even found some. She would put some money in a quart jar and put it in the freezer out there, and so that he wouldn't spend it on his tractors, because he always had a big John Deere tractor, man. I mean, and he even had a little John Deere little one, a mowing machine that Tim would take Tammy around their property out there, and so they had, oh my goodness, they had all kind of peaches and apples and everything. Hello? Hello? Stop. Jason.
Hi, Nelson. Are you at home?
I have all my great grandchildren here right now, Jason. I'll call you when they go home, okay?
No, Nelson. Let me call you.
Okay, that sounds great. Chi-Chi there. Okay,
Yes.
Thanks. Chi-Chi's a guy that takes care of them, and there's like 13 of them in a room. I mean, in a house, and one time I saw how he was treating him, and I was talking to him on the phone. I said, Chi-Chi, can you hear me? I said, hang up your phone. I don't want to talk to you again. He was just treated him so bad. And he has 2 homes, and they pay him as much as $1,100 a piece a month. And Kathy Smith was in a group home down the street, and I took her to church with me, and she got baptized. But after that, she called me all kind of names, but anyway, and she ended up breaking a TV of one of the people, and then she tried to burn the house down.
Yikes.
And they've got her in a mental facility as we speak. But
Well, I want to hear more about. I want
okay.
to hear more about the family, though.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me about when and how you and Dottie met and fell in love?
Okay. Well, she graduated college when I graduated high school. We were 4 years apart. And so she went to Harding, and they just, they sang and all over the place. But she came home. She came to Oklahoma. She came to Oklahoma City when she graduated from college, and we all got together. Sundays and Wednesdays and all the time, and we'd be a lot of funny stories. But all the girlfriends that she had there were her roommates there in Oklahoma City, and so we got to know each other better and better. And one night about midnight, we'd been to a movie. And we were in the car, and it's kind of hard. And they were playing Charmaine by Manavani, and that's when I asked her to marry me. And so it was our love song from then on. And
What did you say to her when you asked her to marry you?
I said, "Would you make me the happiest man in the world?" And she said, "Well, sure." Of course, from then on, we were, dated, and some of her classmates ended up being our best man, which I kind of regret, because I didn't know him very long. I had, a lot of my friends said I should have done it, but I didn't. And so when we got married, the day we got married, the night before we had gone up to the church to find a getaway, a place to go. And so we had our car parked down the street at one of the elders' house. And so we figured out we'd have to go through this barbed wire fence. We'd have to go through there and get back, go back down there. Well, so when we got married, they had all the exits, because at the time they would try to separate the bride and the groom, and so there we're all sitting there and waiting for them. She's changing into her clothes, her real nice clothes, to leave. And so Dad got the message. I mean, he figured out, and so he called the police. And so the police came. He was going to use them to escort us. And they said, "Here they come." Well, everybody ran out from all the deals. We got out, went down. She tore her hose on the barbed wire fence. We got on and got in our car. And so they had taken all of the tin cans and all of that kind of stuff they were going to put on our car, on Dad's car. And we saw them, and we went over to the Wilshire Motel, which cost $14 for us to go. And we went from there to Little Rock and on to Hot Springs, and which was a beautiful area for our honeymoon. and the Park City Hotel is where we stayed there, and then and it was gorgeous there, and hot springs, and we got to go to kind of auctions there and everything, and that was a great trip. But and I don't know, should I tell about her problems or anything? Or,
Any stories you want to tell about it?
well, she. Bless her heart, she had strokes, seizures, Parkinson's for 19 years without any symptoms, and then she had 11.5-hour back surgery for scoliosis, where they put titanium rods down the both sides of her spine, and with those kind of plastic-looking screws, and we had a real trouble finding anybody to even do it at her age, you know, because that's a terrible, and when they operated on her front, and they even had to operate her from the back, and but never complained, and just. So we got to go everywhere. You know, we got to go to Spain. We got to go to every state, and had a ball because it was paid for. But many times, Mom and Dad would come and pick us up, like at Chicago, and then we'd spend a week vacation. And in Chicago, that time one time that we were up there, we went around. We were really wanting to see a lot of stuff. Well, it was cold, and we went through Holland, Michigan. We thought, oh man, the tulips are going to all be in bloom. We saw one bud, and it was just so cold. And so we went up to Mackinac Island, and they had to go to get on a ferry. And to go over to the island, and the thing to do was to go up to the main hotel. Well, they didn't have any wheeled vehicles except emergency vehicles, and so we got over there, and it was so cold. But they had little shops in there, taffy and fudge and that kind of stuff. And I went into the bathroom, and the toilet was frozen. And so we got and we couldn't go to the hotel because the snow was so big. But we wanted to get on the sleigh and go up there, but we couldn't do it, and the snow was too deep. And so we went back and got back to got on the ferry, went back over, and we found out that people that go over and come back are called fudgies. Well, we were fudgies, and so we went on up to around Lake Superior and on over into Wisconsin, and it was so cold, and so as we was coming down to Wisconsin, there was a place where you could get cheese and all kind of cheese stuff. And so I went in there and I said, lady, I'm just curious, where are all the cows? I didn't see one cow. And she said, they're in the barn, dummy. And I said, well, I didn't see any barns. Well, the barns were built underneath the homes. And all the heat, even helped heat their. And so we stopped at Green Bay Packers Stadium, and it was so slick I could just almost slide down to their little museum, and of course it wasn't open, but I got to see the Green Bay Packers, and then we came on down and. They took us to, Mom and Dad took us to O'Hare Airport, and it was 40 degrees, and that's the warmest it had been the entire trip.
Around what time was this big trip that you were doing?
Oh, gosh. Let's see, we were married in 56. It's probably in the early 60s, I would guess.
How long were y'all married before you had Tim?
Let's see, we were married in 54, and he was born in 60.
So, yeah, and then Tammy came 18 months after that, I think. And my goodness, and that's given us all this family that you know. You know, 2 children.
Sure, I'm grateful.
2 children, 5 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way. A little girl. It's supposed to be here September the 22nd. And she's already kicking. And she just got her master's in human resources management.
Yep.
Krista.
Tell me what it was like raising Tim and Tammy with Dottie.
Oh, we just had so much fun with them. We were over a little when we moved here to Houston. We were over a little house on Ione Street, which is 1 block south of Bel Air, and we were at the little house that we had was right next to the railroad tracks. And I can remember coming, the railroad track, the guy said, "Oh, you'll get used to this." Well, it'd wake us up in the middle of the night. But I remember bathing Tim in the sink in this little house, and a cute little old house there. And it's still there. And in fact, a couple have 2 little boys that live there. And and it was really right across from T's nursery, and we took Sarah over to T's nursery with us, and she there was a big a basket of mums, and I turned around and she was laying in the middle of those mums, and but Mr. T's didn't mind, and so in tulip time, well, I was a little late, and so he said, "Go in there and pick out what you want." And I got 100 tulips, and I had no idea, and I put them in the back flower bed, and they all about. And he let me have them for the tulip bulbs for a penny a piece. And so my whole tulip bed was full of the tulips. But then of course when Tammy came along, well, we just had a ball with her, and I showed you some of the pictures of her in there, and of course came to be what she is today, a 4th grade teacher of the year, and Dan's been at NASA now for 37 years, is a GS 15, which is as high as you could go, and they've just been awesome, helping me all through this, because I had, I guess I should tell about my timeshares. I had 14 timeshares all over the United States, and we really knew, and all of us have enjoyed them. But I used my house as collateral, and they foreclosed on my house. And friends all over, especially my class friends, Jamie in Grove, Texas, sent me a check for $6,000. And Frank Stretch in California sent me a check for $4,000, and I eventually got out of that problem. But Holiday Inn Express bought out the timeshares, and they were billing me $20,000 for their maintenance dues, and so that's when I declared bankruptcy, and that was a long, drawn-out affair. But most of the lawyers wanted about $5,000, but my Carl Wierzinski did it for like $2,100, and all the paperwork that you had to fill out, the 100 pages of this and that, he helped me with all of that, and he and his secretary, and the last creditors meeting was August the 19th, and I thought, the creditors are going to rake me over the coals. But the assistant to the judge, she called and said, "Mr. Beckett, I'm going to swear you in over the phone," and she did, and about 10 yes or no questions, and she said, "Mr. Beckett, you're done." And so all of my debt is gone, and all my credit cards are gone. I have a debit card now that I use, and my friends continue to help just out of the blue. Will Greer, who is a high-tech guy, and it helped me through high and low. He sent me a check for $500, and he now lives in Homer, Louisiana, named after the poet, the Iliad and the Odyssey and all of that, and just a super guy. And his wife is going through Alzheimer's, and so that was kind of a sad story. But
would you tell me about what you remember of your grandparents?
Wow. Well,
What were their names?
yes, my granddad. Before they had sanding machines, he started the business, and he was an inventor. And I mean, he invented a vacuum cleaner even way back this is like the turn of the century, and
This was whose?
my grandfather, or my dad's
Your
father.
dad's dad. Okay.
And
And what was his name?
well, his name was Arthur Beckett, but they made him put a middle initial, so he put the letter J, Arthur J. Beckett, and so he got a blade about 12 inches. About 12 inches.
Here, let me help you with this. Now carry this over there in that room. Thank you, buddy. Go with him if you want.
And so he sharpened a blade, a metal blade, real sharp. And then he took a 200-pound lead weight and put it on there. And then he would put coal oil on, like turpentine, on the floor, and he would pull it like a plow, and pull it, and it would be as slick as that glass. And he'd even take that 200 pounds up a flight of stairs when he was doing it. And I talked to the mortician after he died, and he said, "I've never seen a back with as much muscles in it when he died." And he died, actually, he puffed on a cigar, and we'd go from Oklahoma City down to Rockport, and I tell you, 8 of us, and big old ambassador, and go all the way down there, and we'd unload, and we couldn't find Grandpa Beckett. And we looked out, and he was already fishing out on the end of a pier at night. Had him a light out there fishing, and so we were fishing in a boat, and Bobby Barnes was in there, and Dad and I, and so he made his own weights. You know, the weight out of lead like a little pyramid, you know, and so his rod had one of those freewheeling deals, you know, throw it in. Well, he forgot to throw it and put it in freewheeling, and he threw it, and the rod, reel, and all went out in the lake. And Bob Barnes back there said, "Right where you wanted it, wasn't it, Pops?" And he about climbed over it. And we actually kept casting treble hooks and stuff, and found his rod and pulled it back up in. But I thought that was a great story. But he was something else, and taught them all. And he would get on the. He put them in an orphanage there in Oklahoma City, and he would work and come out on the trolley all the way out there to be with them on weekends and stuff. And but he was an amazing guy, and you saw some of the pictures of him in there. And
What about his wife?
well, I never got to meet her. Well, I take it back. I think I did. One of them. He was married a couple of times because. And he made little toys for the kids, and he had a little shop right out of his house there, and he would in the evenings he would play. He had he could play the guitar, and he had a deal where they had a French harp there, and he'd be playing that, and the kids would just gather around while he played, and so he really enjoyed helping them, and when he invented that, and I think I still have the blueprints of the vacuum cleaner. It would do the baseboards and the ceilings even, and so he was quite a guy, and I'm just sorry that I didn't know him more than I did, but I did get to know him, and of course we got to where we could do auditoriums, and we'd have two big old sanding machines and do those in Oklahoma City. And of course my Steve and Shirley and Ron and Mary, they're still alive, and Beckett Brothers is still going. They sold it to some of the guys that used to work for him, and so it's a long thing, since Dad was born in 1910, and they started that. I don't know the year that it did, but Orville, of course, has died, and Orville and Edith, and Orville and Edith were Dad's brother and his wife, and he was a deacon in the Baptist church, and that's kind of like an elder, and but George, his son.
Put some toys in that bag, that brown bag over there. Put the toys in the car with Mommy, and she's out getting lunch. If you look right over there, there's a brown bag, and I brought those toys inside. Okay, let me show you. Okay.
I don't want those. I want the other toys.
Okay, I'm sorry, we don't have the other ones, but you can grab those ones if you want. But Mommy will be home very soon, and then you can get them then.
Mom, I'm about the toys in the car.
Okay, well, when Mommy gets back, then you can get them.
Is there a car here?
No, because Mommy's in the car. What do you remember about your other grandparents? Mimi's parents.
Well, that's the ones that I was telling you. All of the ones.
Oh, I thought you said that was your dad's parents.
No, that was Mimi's parents.
Oh.
Yeah. No, those were Dad's parents that I've been telling you about. Yeah, and but her parents, her mother was paralyzed, but I've got pictures of her, and all of her side of the family as well. But I didn't really. I really didn't know them because they were, really old, but I think that, I'll tell you about George. He was the oldest, and he could play every instrument, and I mean, just a straight A student and everything else, but he ended up being a pedophile. and Betty Beckett is a nurse, still alive, but George is not. He had like 6 children or something like that. But and she married a gal, and but she's still alive. But George is gone, and all of his kids, they're all Church of Christ too. But I know a Baptist, but he's gone, but they're all being raised and being, they're Christians, Baptist, and but I wish I did know more about mother's side, and I've got old pictures of her, back there, But anyway, she was very, very nice and babysat me and everything, and even got the kids talked her into building a little house over on the other side of town, and they milked her for all it was worth. They got money out of her, but she continued to babysit me and taught me how to do puzzles and all kind of, and she really took care of me. And
what are some of your first impressionable memories as a kid?
of what?
As a young boy, what are some of your
Sometimes.
memories?
Okay. Well, of course, I played the accordion, and I remember having to haul that thing around and everything. And my first bicycle when I was 7 years old, and I remember playing Annie over with Charlie, and it would take a tennis ball and throw it over the house, and then we'd try to race around there to see if he got it, and then he'd go the other direction. And some of the things that we did to play tricks on people, we'd take somebody that from school, and we'd say, I want you to see how fast the Lord can make this tree to grow. And so we'd say, okay, and he said, you run around the house and we'll show you. Well, we had a little tree, a little thing that came around and said, oh, wow, already that big. We'd come around, and then he'd go and we'd pull out another one that was a little bit taller, and said, wow, look, this is as big. I've never seen a tree grow that fast. And we just had a lot of fun. But up and down our street, at night, a bulldog, one of these, he came running down the street, and dogs would come out, and he'd kill them. I mean, it was terrible, but those are just some of the stories that we had. But okay. I dated a girl by the name of Ruthie Gardner, and she was a barrel racer in the rodeo, and she would, and she was a championship rider, and so one day I was over to her house, and I heard her dad coming, and she said, "Oh, hide in the closet." He always opens the closet first. Well, he came in and opened the closet, and I just kind of fell out. And he took a swing and hit the door facing with his hand. And but she was so cute, and she's a little gal. And of course, I got to go to her funeral up in Oklahoma City. But we'd go out on dates and stuff together and enjoy each other's company. And so we called her Dot. Okay. Well, at a place in California, El Cajon Boulevard Church of Christ, I'd walk into the church, and the preacher would say, "Hi, Dot," and then they said, "Hi, Dash." And so when I was in Japan, I had this cup made that said Dash. I was Dash. And so let's all bow our heads and we'll say grace. Father, thank you so much for all that you do for us every hour of every day. You give us more than we even ask. Father, you know that we thank you for the very air that we breathe, that you give us, and you give us fun things to do, and you give us medicine when we're sick, and we thank you for all of that, Father. But most of all, we thank you for Jesus, who died for all of our sins, and we just pray, Father, that you just take care of all of those right now that are suffering from COVID and all of the problems that our earth is facing at this time. And especially I thank you for bringing my family here today and blessing my life so richly. And we all say thank you for this food, and we just pray that you just bless it to the nourishment of our bodies. And Father, help each one of us to be the example that we should be before others, to lead more people to you, because we're your hands and your feet here on earth, and we want to do that, Father. Thank you again. We pray in Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
First of all, the ship was called a flagship. A flag means that the admiral would be aboard when he was needed, but he would stay on a carrier until such time as he was needed, and he would get on our helicopter and come over to the ship. And so the first bomb was called Anahuac, at the island. And he said we were 15 miles away from the blast, and he told all of us to sit on deck, put our arms over our eyes like this, and face away from the blast. Well, half of the crew was crying because they didn't know if there'd be a tomorrow. It's the first one, you know. And when it went off, it was 10 times brighter than the sun, and I could actually see the bone in my arm like an X-ray. And I turned around, and the cloud was gray like we thought it would be, but inside the cloud was like a fire of reds and blues and purples all the way up as far as we could see. And then we got, about 5 days later, we got on a mike boat. And a mike boat is where the front end of the boat goes down like that. And all the sailors that had liberty, we got in our swimsuits and got on that mike boat and went over to Anahuac, and it was a mile long and a half mile wide, and it was nothing but sand. It had just been blown completely smooth. And so I picked up seashells around the seashore while they were in under a tent getting refreshments. And they even were playing a little volleyball. And then we blew away a Bikini and didn't stop there, and we went on to Manila Bay. And the helicopter pilot flew over to the mainland and got some of those little sweet bananas. And the Filipinos to this day call that a banana split. And then I went all the way up to the Formosa Straits in a typhoon, and then on up to Japan and China, and all back in 21 months because I was drafted. But when I was in Japan, in Yokohama, I could look out at Mount Fuji and all the pretty snow-capped mountain, and I got on this high-speed train, and Annabelle, it went 200 miles an hour and flew all the way up to, went all the way up to China. And so when I got to China, I got on a rickshaw and went over to the Imperial Palace grounds, and went back, and there was even a hotel called the Imperial Palace. And so about a block away was a little place, a tea room. And so I thought, well, I'll try that out. And I went in, and all the way up, it was velvet, all the walls, and got up there, and sure enough, it was a little tiny restaurant. And the geisha girls were my waitresses. And in their outfits and their kimonos, and they were just so neat. And so while there, I went to on a tour to a huge Buddha. I mean, it was, and the Chinese, oh man, there were 3 bus loads of them unloading to see it. And so I got to walk up beside the Buddhists as they were walking along there. And of course, the Buddha was immense. We got to see that while we were there. And Japan was great, and I told the story, I don't think you got to see it, about the artist, you know, while we were in China. And but he
watch the video later. And
yeah, the video, and you can, I don't know what you will send me, but you can send me whatever you can on that. But so I had a really good time. But then, Annabelle, I got to go to Mexico City because I was in a pharmaceutical company that Savage Laboratories, and he was Church of Christ, and so he claimed that he really knew Spanish, and so we all, about 6 or 7 of us wanted to go play golf, and we were going to go play golf at the Club de Golf de Mexico, which was the golf course, and so we got in the car, the cab, and went all the way over to this golf course. Oh, and it was just beautiful. I mean, and there was a gardener on every hole and planting flowers.